Today we got a handful of stories that are all just kind of linked by the same thread that the government, regardless of what country you live in, is completely and 100% fucking with you at this point. You don't believe me? Well, most of the deep state spook agencies, not that kind of spook, are completely purging the party of any dissenting opinions. Like this guy right here, he's been brought in. Richard Torres Estrada, I think we all know why he was brought in. Maybe not because he's terribly qualified, just like everybody else that's being put into Biden's cabinet, but because he has the right opinion, okay? U.S. Special Operations Command, USOCOM, did not know that a newly hired officer had compared former President Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. If he has a Twitter account, I'm sure he has. And expressed support for the quasi-Marxist equity theory. Oh no, there's nothing quasi about that. A spokesperson said on Saturday. USOCOM, on Thursday, announced the hiring of Richard Torres Estrada as its chief of diversity and inclusion. Aw, that's why he's there. Not because he's competent, and it's probably because he has those non-existent shoulders and he kind of looks like a stunt double for Mitch McConnell. But no, he has right think. Torres Estrada last year compared Trump, who was president at the time, you don't say, with Hitler, who perpetuated the Holocaust. Whoa, do we know about this guy? We should. I've heard the Holocaust. It's a bad thing. I think we should probably get on top of that. Killing oh my. Wow. Where is this guy? In Europe? I hope Biden's going to take this very seriously. He also made at least other clear anti-Trump posts, according to Facebook posts reviewed by the Epoch Times. In addition, Torres Estrada posted an image expressing support for radical theory of equity, which posits that an equal outcome among people is favorable to certain persons getting ahead of others. Equality of outcome is what all of these idiots want. They just want people, if you're black, if you're brown, if you're a male, if you're a female, it doesn't much matter. You need one of each. Regardless of competency, it all comes down to immutable characteristics. And here are some of his posts. I haven't quite ever seen that one. That's weird. What is this, Facebook or something? Here I leave this and slowly retire. Oh, I wish he would have followed through on that one. Yeah, because nobody's ever held up a book before. Like, whatever. These people just see fucking crazy shit wherever they go. And you know what? It wouldn't be so bad if there was one chinless, soy-infused sack of shit. But it's all of them now, because the DHS head purges Homeland Security Advisor Council, ousting all Trump-era appointees. So they're all gone, okay? No dissenting opinions were sent. And I can't really figure out if Mayorkas is wearing 3 masks or what the fuck is going on, because it looks like he has the white one underneath, and then he's got one around his mouth and a one around his nose. I just wish that there was one around his neck. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, Chief Alejandro Mayorkas has fired nearly all members of Homeland Security Advisory Panel because they were doing such a good job they needed to include a little bit of equity and diversity, because God knows they aren't inclusive enough. Retaining only its senior leadership, according to the letter obtained by media outlets and confirmed by Republicans on a House committee, showing you how useful and ineffectual their belly aching is. That's something that was really highlighted by Kristi Noem completely cucking out. Something that perhaps we'll get to. I do believe that it was the governor of Arkansas signed a bill that made it so that females participate in this radical thing called female-only athletics, and males participate in only male athletics. He signed the exact law that Kristi Noem sent back to the House because, I don't want to take on the NCAA. But meanwhile, a governor in quite possibly a less relevant state, nothing against the people of Arkansas, but even a comparable state, he had the guts to actually sign it. Just showing you that it all comes down to how and where your money comes from. I don't know, I think that Noem's probably lost a lot of support among a bunch of people lately, and that there really crystallizes it. So yeah, everybody used to collect a paycheck from the Trump administration, slowly but surely getting eased out. And by eased, I mean grabbed by the collar and by the shorts and just hauled out the front door. But who's taking their place? Well, we can look at the Secretary of Transportation. Okay, wasn't that Mitch McConnell's wife in there last time in that spot? Well, it's been taken up by former moderate presidential candidate during the 2020 cycle, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Everybody on the center and on the left is like, hey, you know what? I like Andrew Yang, I like Tulsi Gabbard, and Pete sounds like a good guy, you know. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he really just seems like a kind of a moderate guy. And now that he's taken over the Department of Transportation, he's looking at a mileage tax. What the fuck is a mileage tax? Well, if anybody's scared about a carbon tax, don't worry. They're going to try to tax your movement now. Fuck, they'll just cut out the middleman. And you go to buy some gasoline or any sort of fuel for your vehicle. No, that's too late. They'd rather just tax you for driving. Literally. The socialists or the Soviets back in the USSR couldn't have thought up something so pernicious and evil. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg floats vehicle miles tax for infrastructure spending extravaganza. Big words. We love it. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg floated a vehicle miles tax Friday to pay for the likely $3 trillion infrastructure spending extravaganza. Speaking to CNBC, Buttigieg claimed President Joe Biden's forthcoming plans to rebuild the national roads, bridges, and waterways would lead to a net gain for the U.S. taxpayers and not a net outlay. How could you possibly say that with a straight face? Well, he didn't, if you take a look at the video. I don't know, he's just kind of got that weird howdy-doody head that always just kind of has upturned corners of his mouth, perhaps to facilitate what he does on his off hours. I'm not too sure, though. When you think about infrastructure, it's a classic example of the kind of investment that has a return on that investment. Investment. We get it. You aren't that smart with a diverse vocabulary. That's one of the many reasons why we think that it is so important. This is a jobs vision as much as it is an infrastructure vision, a climate vision, and more. Get to the point, asshole. Oh, here's a good one. Breitbart News reported Buttigieg views his job not simply as roads and railways, but as an outpost in the culture wars. In February, Buttigieg said he was going to tackle systemic racism from his position. Yeah, no more underground railroads for old Fudgepacker Pete. A vehicle miles tax would cost drivers based on how far they drive, not on how much gasoline is consumed. So if we're going to go ahead and adopt the leftist logic of my carbon, my human-made climate change, if you're going to be doing a mileage tax, does that take into account hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, okay? Things that, if you're a leftist, you believe are 100% the answer to those old gas guzzlers, right? They're so much cleaner, they don't emit any sort of emissions, which is true, but if you look under the hood, it takes a lot more to actually create those vehicles than it is to run them compared to a conventional gasoline engine, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. So how would taxing people based on their mileage combat climate change? Unless everything that you're saying is complete and utter horseshit. A so-called vehicle miles traveled tax or mileage tax, whatever you want to call it, could be a way to do it. That sounds retarded. It's not clear whether a vehicle miles tax would replace the federal gas tax or would be addition to it. Oh, I think we know it would definitely be the latter. But Judge also did not say if certain vehicles the Democrats prefer would be exempt. Come on now. They would fucking tax everybody because this is the way that they can put everybody further on the government tit. Okay? They start charging you for the miles that you traveled. It keeps going up to a point where, gasoline, whatever it is, just about $4 a gallon, right? They just knock it up eventually, depending on what it is for your mileage. And I'm not even sure how they're going to track it. But they get it to a point where gasoline, if you include that tax over the long haul, is $7, $8 a gallon. And then they just put you on the government buses. They take you to your job. And you just go there and then you hop back on the little bus. And then it drives you back home where you can just sit, turn on cable news, and sit there, eat the bugs and coom, and never think of anything else. The government has your back. It's weird, right? I've been thinking about this story. It dropped yesterday. And it's like, okay, how would you monitor this, okay? Would it be with your insurance at the end of the year when you have to talk to your provider, when you have to register your vehicle again? Do you report how many miles you put down, or do you have to put in an additional little device in every vehicle that tracks how many miles you've traveled? Also, if it's another little piece of equipment that gets put in your vehicle, it definitely wouldn't only be tracking how many miles you go. It'd be tracking how fast you go, where you're going, and that wouldn't be ever used against you now, would it? No, of course not. This is another Democrat cash grab. What they're trying to do is spin it as a way of, you're wasting so much gasoline, and my carbon emissions, and if people wouldn't drive so far, even though when you start up your vehicle is the most emission emitting part of the driving cycle. Whatever, they don't ever think about stuff this quickly, or rather this in depth. No, it's just another cash grab. That's all it is at the end of the day. I don't think that if it does get implemented, it won't be there for very long. And I don't think that this would be popular anywhere outside of metropolitan areas. Because if you try to eventually push people towards public busing, public transit, whatever, bullet trains, trolleys, little illegal immigrants pushing wheelbarrows full of people from place to place, whatever. Not everybody lives in a fucking city. And that's what Democrats don't get nowadays. There used to be working class Democrats, obviously. That's where Joe Biden started. But somewhere along the line, he forgot that. And most of his cabinet picks were never around for that time, where that's what Democrats used to be about. It won't work in places in the middle of the country, in those vaunted flyover states. Do you think people that live in rural Indiana, Iowa, do you think that people live out in the country or just even in the suburbs, you think that they're going to want to give up their vehicles? And it's not even practical. Like the size of Montana, people live out in the middle of nowhere. And if you put a mileage tax and you price them out of the game, are you going to start sending out public transit out to the middle of nowhere? I fucking highly doubt it. But eventually they just want everybody to move into the cities because they have desperate ambitions for the future. They realize that, man, all of our policies are just kind of funneled towards the big cities and everybody else hates our guts. So how do we do it? Well, we price them out of the game and force them into the big cities. It's a long-term play, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, this is the government just fucking with everybody because there is no clearer example of freedom than the single-person motor vehicle. And there's also nothing more terrifying than the 9 little words that Ronald Reagan pointed out. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. With that said, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.